Hello and welcome everybody to the Poker Fuse podcast. It is February 26, 2020. This is episode number 44. I'm your host, Mike Gentili, along with my co-host, Nick Jones. This week on the podcast, Unibet Poker is celebrating its 6th birthday. We take a look back at their successes over that time, as well as what players can expect in their 7th year. Online poker players can now satellite directly into PSPC 2020. We have all the details on these new satellites and how even small bankroll players can qualify. Plus, we'll update you on the progress of the Platinum Pass giveaways from PokerStars and take a look at where and how Platinum Passes have been distributed so far. And finally, the new side bet feature by PokerStars has gone live in the global.com market. We'll break down how this feature works and offer opinions on its potential success. So last week we talked about one of the online poker rooms having a birthday, Run It Once Turned One. And this week we are going to touch on another milestone for another online poker operator, and that is Unibet.
Yeah, so Unibet are celebrating their 6 years of operating their independent online poker room, which is, I mean, that's very much like a time flies. I can remember just kind of yesterday when they launched their new, software and how much of a change it was back then, some of the things that they did. And honestly, like 6 years later, it's still pretty unique. Definitely seen some operators take some of the ideas of their client and integrated them, Run It Once being perhaps the most obvious example. But yeah, so 6 years and still going strong. It's an operator that is still probably, third tier, we'd consider it, but, growing every year, growing their cash games and tournaments every year. So it's really good to see them celebrating their 6th year.
And just for the listeners that may not be aware, this is 6th year of their independent online poker room. They had, in a previous iteration, been on, I believe it was the MPN network. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. So they were a skin on MPN up until 2014. They're a long-established European online gambling company. I can't think when they would have first launched online poker, but a pretty long time ago. But they were definitely languishing, I guess, on the MPN 6 years ago. So they took that leap. Probably the project must have started 8 years ago, honestly, working with an independent company called Relax Gaming to build from scratch a new poker product, basically. And that's what they did. They launched onto that new platform, migrated their players over 6 years ago this month, and have been just developing and iterating on that product since.
Nick, what would you say are some of the main differences between the online poker platform that Unibet has developed and, say, some of the big guys like PokerStars, Party Poker?
Yeah, so the one thing that still stands out that the major operators still don't do is having an entirely blind lobby. So there's no list of tables, there's no table or seat selection. You choose the game you want to play, you choose the stakes you want to play, and you hit a button and then you're taken to a table. It's a format that all operators have in some guise for some of their games. So with all PokerStars new games, they have that kind of blind lobby system. I'm sure there would have been some operators who had it before Unibet. I don't think they were the first ever to do it, but their platform is 100% designed in that way. And Run It Once has done a similar thing since they've come along, but none of the major operators, it looked like PokerStars were moving towards that, but it seems like they've shied away from that. So that still stands out. They still have anonymous tables. They still don't even have hand histories, though I think that's something they're looking to address this year. Entirely anonymous tables, or at least you can change your screen name whenever you like. And they also have a very limited selection of games as well. So they chose and still have today a very narrow band of stakes, definitely focused in the micro stakes to small stakes. They might have one mid stake, just no limit and PLO. And then, even with their tournament offerings, they have their Banzai tournaments, a few sit and goes, and recently their Hexa Pro Lottery sit and go, although they were pretty late to the party launching that. So, very narrow band of products that they want to offer poker players.
And no hand histories then means the no tracking, I would assume, correct?
Yeah, and that was also something that made them stand out 6 years ago was, a complete ban on any third-party tools whatsoever. That still stands, and as I say, I believe they are talking about they want to add in hand histories for after the fact so people can import their hands and review their play. But it would still be no HUDs, obviously no seat selection tools are kind of nullified by the lobby that they have. Nothing that interfaces with the product whatsoever. So again, that's a trend that we've seen over the last few years. Most operators have restricted the tools that are allowed. Party poker particularly are no HUD now, no seating scripts. PokerStars are moving in that direction. But Unibet were definitely ahead of the curve with that, and we've seen some of the larger operators move in that way, if not go to the full extreme that Unibet are at.
With me being in the U.S., I haven't had a chance to actually get on the platform and play it. I'm wondering, first of all, Nick, if you have, and if you have, how's the playing experience? We've seen Aurora or PokerStars roll out their game engine Aurora. We've seen Run It Once put an emphasis on animation and just cool things for players at the tables. And now we're seeing Party Poker moving in a similar direction with their mobile client. How's the playing experience over on Unibet? I
think the desktop perspective, and I can only really talk with much experience comparing desktop clients, I think it's very good, although I do think that I like PokerStars Aurora game engine. I think that has a good feel to it as well. I think Run It Once is perhaps best in class. I don't really get a chance to play on the Winamax one much, but I know that's pretty well regarded. The thing with the Unibet one is when it first launched, because I think they were so quick to bring it to market, it was pretty rough around the edges. In the last few years, I think they've made quite a lot of improvements to it. It's a good experience. It's pretty unique. Like, they have quite a cartoony look and feel, which is a bit different, perhaps. I don't know, slightly more serious feel that you get from kind of the PokerStars and Party Poker clients. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good. It certainly resonates with players, and that's the real story here. Kindred Group, Unibet's parent company, launched their financial results last week for 2019. And poker, although it's still a very small part of their portfolio, it should be pointed out, has grown since, just having a look at the graph here, the last 5 years, it has grown every year, the amount of revenue they've generated from poker in the region of 10 to 20%. Oh no, I should say 20 to 30% every single year since 2015, which is well outside what anyone else in the industry is reporting. It's even now outside what Kindred Group is doing in their wider portfolio. So it used to be that, sports and casino grew 15-20%, poker came along for the ride, and you could just say, that's just a bigger customer base and more of them are coming into the poker product. But Kindred Group overall had a pretty bad 2019, but poker just continued growing up to, so talking raw numbers, they did over £20 million in revenue, which is close to, $28 million in revenue in 2019. It's 3 times what they did 5 or 6 years ago. When they, moved off MPN. So just from a pure revenue standpoint, it's been hugely successful. It's still only 2.5% of the, company portfolio. Kindred Group is massive when it comes to sports and casino. But it's growing on its own. It's bringing in players to the brand, absolutely. And just in that raw number, honestly, that's probably half the size of what 888 does in terms of poker. And I think, I would perhaps think 888 is 5 to 10 times larger. They have a huge brand. Their poker has always been massive, but Unibet is catching up to them. As I say, still third tier. It's not like what the Stars Group does in terms of online poker, but it's significant and it's growing consistently every quarter, every year.
Yeah, so that those revenue figures are comparable to New Jersey, which I think their annual revenue last year was somewhere in the ballpark of 20 million.
Right. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, interesting to see them operating on the global market. It gives a bit of perspective, I guess, to some of the U.S. markets that we're seeing here. So what do you think is next on the roadmap for Unibet? What should players be looking forward to as they enter their 7th year? Is there any major developments that we expect to see anytime soon?
Well, they've talked about hand histories that they want to add. They have talked about a new rewards program, so revamping the rewards program. Haven't revealed at all what that will look like, and that might have been pushed back to late this year or 2021 now. Yeah, I mean, continued iterative developments on the platform, but they haven't said anything major that's coming. So I guess continuing to do what is working for them. They've got a live series. I think it's in Dublin now, which I don't know actually if you saw, Mike, the news yesterday that Victor Blom is in Dublin to play the Unibet Open. I saw that on social media yesterday.
I did not. I wonder if he'll be playing on a live stream in real time with no delay.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's something going on there behind the scenes between like Isildur and the Unibet team in terms of like an ambassadorship or something. It wouldn't seem like it would line up really with what Unibet do in terms of like their streamers and whatnot, but it seems like an interesting place for him to surface to play. Not a nosebleed tournament. A fairly kind of middle of the road tournament.
Has he had any connections to Unibet in the past?
Man, so I when I read this,
I want to say yes, but I
think
sure.
so as well, and I can't remember why. Maybe our listeners can tell us. So I did a real quick look at his Twitter profile, because it's one of those names that's like I can't think what stories he's been involved with in the last 5 years. It was like 7-8 years ago he was a PokerStars ambassador, then Full Tilt ambassador, and then since then he's definitely been off my radar.
Yeah, so that joke I made about the live stream, that actually happened, and I almost want to say that he was playing on Unibet? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's been a while since we've heard anything from Isildur. It will be interesting to see him. When is that tournament in Dublin?
Now. It started
it's happening.
Today. Okay. Wednesday, runs through to, I guess, Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, so back to your bigger question, I think, they'll continue doing what they're doing. They've got still promoting Hexapro a lot. They've got that standalone client, which is being rolled out to some of the Kindred's casino brands. So that could bring in more poker players to the tables, more live stops. And I guess just continue growing. It'll be really interesting to see in 2020 if just the same again is enough to keep their revenue growing. Because as I say, if it keeps going like this in 2 or 3 years, they will be up there, at least in like the second tier, up there with 888 and Party Poker in terms of just raw revenue generation. I think it's a brand that players really like. I think they're doing, and that's it. They're not that splashy, right? They're not going around signing up a dozen Twitch ambassadors, to get the name out, or having these huge, I couldn't tell you how much their Sunday, I think it's called the Supernova tournament series, their tournament on Sunday, how much it guarantees. But, it's not a GG Masters or a crazy Party Poker Million or anything. They're just doing their own thing, running a profitable business, and seem to do quite well out of it. So
one thing that I've seen that sets them apart is their sponsored pros. The way that they use their ambassadors, I think it has withstood the past few years, the test of time, I guess. I think that they have this cohesive team-like feel that I don't know, I don't see in some of the bigger operators. And, they also sponsor the podcast, Chip Race, which is hosted by their ambassadors as well. So I think they're doing a lot of interesting stuff in the way of marketing with professionals that maybe some of the bigger rooms can learn from.
Yeah. Well, so we should just finish with what for their 6-year birthday, they're running promotions. If you've got an account or are interested, you can check them out. Honestly, they run these promotions kind of every month. They're always pretty cool, always give away like 100,000 euros. So it's not a once in a lifetime kind of thing. But their promotion is super simple. If you're playing on their cash game tables, they are dropping random prizes at the tables, giving away like 90 grand over the next 6 weeks. You don't have to do anything at all other than sit and play. Most of the prizes are going out to like the nano stakes and micro stakes players. So you sit at a table and you might get like €100 prize. So they're running that, I think, from now for the next 5-6 weeks. So yeah, check that out if you want to help Unibet celebrate their 6th birthday. So the ramp up to the PokerStars Players No Limit Hold'em Championship 2020 in Barcelona continues, and we now have direct satellites, Mike, that you can buy into to start your journey to the PSPC. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. PokerStars has made these direct satellites available. They have €1,050 buy-in is the price tag. Players can also win their way into these satellites for the qualifiers start at, and I'm never sure how to say this, 55 cents euro. Is that the correct way of
55 euro cents? I guess.
Yeah, okay. Well, whatever it is, that's the number. They also have free buys. Free buys are guaranteeing at least one seat into the 55 euro cent buy-in qualifiers. There's rebuys and add-ins that you can, I think those are like 11 cent euro for those free buy tournaments. It's so they're making it easier for players to qualify with poker related paths to platinum passes is really the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, and so we talked, I think we talked on this podcast a week or 2 weeks ago about how it's been a lot more kind of live focused and in terms of the platinum passes that they've given away. But just about the direct buy-ins, so it's €1,000 to buy in directly. And obviously the pass is valued at €25,000 or €22,500, something like that. So
€26,000.
Oh, well, that's
the
it,
pass itself, the
26,500.
package. Yeah, because their package is given away, right?
Yeah. Are they guaranteeing like a seat in each of these direct buy-in satellites, or is it just?
Yeah, so I believe they're guaranteeing one pass for each of these satellites. I think they had announced 6 when they first came out. One has already taken place. That one took place on the 16th of February. They had a total of 57 entries, and 2 platinum passes were awarded.
Oh, okay. So that answers my next question. I was going to say, yeah, and still worth keeping an eye on these. We've got an article up on PokerFuse if you want a lot more details on this. But when we've seen them do the mega pass satellites before, there were definitely spots of value there where they were guaranteeing passes and seemingly not getting anywhere near the number of people to kind of cover. So obviously that is, that doubled the guarantee, but, maybe in a couple of weeks, the interest dies down and there might be some kind of value opportunities for these satellite buy-ins.
Yeah, the next one is scheduled for March 1st. So we still have a little ways to go before that one kicks off. It's their total number of platinum passes that they have awarded so far is over 140. And with what do we have? March, April, May, June, July, 5 months left before the PSPC really. Players need to start making their way over there. It's still more than one a day that they need to give away between now and then to exceed the 320, which is news that they broke recently, saying that they will give away more platinum passes than the 320 they gave away last year.
Yeah. So this is just going to be one of dozens and dozens of opportunities to find your way to Barcelona in August. As you say, like up until recently, beyond the Megapath satellites, which they ran, I think it's hard to know. We know they ran them over Christmas, and then they said they were going to end in January, but then we saw them still running in the client, and now they say on the site they'll be going till March. But last time I looked, there weren't any in my client in the UK, so I'm not quite sure there. But anyway, beyond those, so many more were just given away during the live tour. They're running specific tours, Road to the PSPC tours with Moneymaker as the front man. They have in France a new ambassador, Clido Sau, and in Spain they have Ramon Collias, of course, all fronting like specific tours, giving away platinum passes, and then they distribute more during like their Italian tours and all this. Dozens and dozens of them. I mean, they're just going to have to give away so many more online if they're going to hit the number of 320, because there's only so many that they can be giving out at the remaining live stops that they've got. Yeah.
I think according to some crunching of numbers that I think you did, Nick.
I did. Well, yeah. The computer did it. The computer did it, Mike. I wrote the code to scrape the PokerStars website to collate all the Platinum Pass winners and how they won.
Okay, well, since that was your doing, why don't you tell us a little bit about what those numbers reveal?
See, I knew you were going to say that because I ran that report for you and copied and pasted the details for you, and I haven't looked at it myself. I mean, the one thing that absolutely jumps out is just how many have been awarded to French and Spanish players.
Right.
Like, you kind of get that feeling anyway, and so, so much of their live stuff has been focused there. And of course, it makes sense. It's a stop in Barcelona, so it's it's going to be fairly obvious that a lot of Spanish people are going to want to win tickets to it. With that said, if you were to ask me like where PokerStars is going to be targeting a lot of these, the UK is always going to be right at the top just because it's such a valuable market for online poker operators. But we're talking. So when we did this count of 140 winners according to PokerStars' current count, 24 in France and 20 are in Spain. So that is 40% of all Platinum Passes, is that right? 30% of all Platinum Passes have gone to people to just those two countries, and then 18 in the UK, 12 in Germany, 10 in Canada, 10 in Russia. So loads in France and Spain. Now that really just highlights again, like I think so much of the live tour stuff they've done. I mean, it also jumps out to me, only 2 in Italy. I mean, you would think Italy would be up there just as much in terms of just important European markets, obviously pretty near Spain. They run a lot of live stuff there with their sponsorship of the IPO. So that really surprised me. Maybe that's just the roll of the dice that they're giving them away on the Italian tour, but, a bunch of French and Spanish people won them, but,
Yeah, a lot can be timing as well. So right now, they're in the midst of the Platinum Madness promotion, which is awarding just as many Platinum Passes in the Southern European segregated market, which is France and Spain, Portugal, that they are in the .com market. So it perhaps those numbers are a bit skewed just because this promotion is almost wrapping up, and there was a big push to give away those passes in those markets, and perhaps we'll see those numbers maybe level off or even out as time goes on.
Yeah, but then, it was PokerStars' decision to give away an equal number in the French-Spanish market as it was across the rest of the world, which blew me away. So, if anything, that underscores, how much focus they are putting into those markets. The only other thing that I gleaned from this report, just glancing at it now, is something that was pointed out to me on Twitter when we were talking about PokerStars giving away more Platinum Passes this time around was, are they all given away like for free, or is it through things that cost money? Because obviously that makes a huge difference. And that's a fair point. So with the Mega Path, there were guaranteed seats. There did seem to be a lot of value there, but it's still, you buy to enter these satellites to start your progress. Right. So ultimately, PokerStars could even, if they're covering their guarantees, could even be making money on them rather than it costing them money. So absolutely, of the 140 they've given away, 36 of them, according to PokerStars' own count, are through Megapath. So, at that rate, what's that, 36 of 140, a fifth of them, something like that, a quarter of them are through the Megapath. So, and again, it did seem like that was costing them some money, giving away those tickets through that path. But so in that way, PokerStars might have found a way to kind of make it a little bit cheaper for them. But still, if 3/4 are basically just being distributed, and just looking down the list, it's all Platinum Pass Experience winners, Mystery Chest winners, Dare to Dream winners, Spin and Go 10 winners. I'm not quite sure what that was, what promotion that was. And then it's just a long list of like 2 at the BSOP, 2 at another BSOP, 1 at the IPO, 12 Days of Spragmas gave away 2. These were all just like, freebies and people entering on social media or going to live events and that kind of stuff. So still 3/4 of them are costing PokerStars, that top line figure.
Yeah, two things stood out to me out of the report that you ran. Was only 4 for the U.S. I guess that's understandable to some point because there's, they're only limited to their 2 states, Pennsylvania and New Jersey currently. But I feel like the U.S. market offers a lot of opportunity for promotion wider around the globe. But, maybe that number will change. And the other thing that stood out to me is the breakdown between the ones given away live versus online. And currently that ratio is about 60-40. I wonder if that's going to have to creep up. As we talked about earlier, it's going to have to creep up. The online is going to have to increase. And I wonder what that number is going to end up being when all is said and done.
Yeah, and I just wonder what they've got planned for the remaining however many, 200, almost 180 passes to still give out, because they seem to have decided they're not going to give them out to like winners of big tournament series. So, I mean, maybe we'll have some in Scoop for like the leaderboard, or maybe, again, it'll be more random, like it'll be random drops to people who've entered Scoop tournaments, so maybe some kind of tie in there. It's just a lot, isn't it? As you say, like it's still probably 10 a week they have to give away up until, the beginning of August. You think they want to get rid of most of them by like 2 weeks out of the tournament. So yeah, I guess if direct buying satellites for $1,000 is not, up your street, then keep a lookout for probably any other possible avenue, whether you play casino games or sports bets or spin and goes or whatever. There'll probably be something that ties into a good chance of you getting a platinum pass. So I'd just say, keep your eyes on PokerFuse, because Mike's doing a grand job keeping that all updated with all the details. And yeah, I'm sure there's something crop up that suits you.
Something we touched on an earlier episode of this podcast was the introduction of side bets by PokerStars at their online poker tables. That gives players the ability to make casino-style bets alongside their online poker experience. Nick, what can you tell us about the side bets feature?
Yeah, so we probably talked about this on the podcast 4 weeks ago, it's gone live. Like kind of as we suspected, we knew that a few weeks ago they started testing this for real money for some customers in some markets. We didn't get access to it. Through all our tries and all our accounts and all our different markets, we were not in any cohort that gave us access. But we knew it was there. We'd seen reports of people, seemed to be live in the UK for some people, in Russia for some people. But now it's live everywhere. So if you're in the UK, in the .com or .eu market, and I think Russia, you can use it now if you want. As you just described, Mike, if you're playing a no-limit cash game hand, not Zoom is not supported, then you can place a side bet. You have two bets you can make. You can bet on your whole cards or you can bet on your flop cards. And this is one thing I'm not sure if we knew exactly how it was going to work when we spoke before, but it's kind of like a casino game or video poker where you place a bet and you don't specify what kind of bet, and then depending on what happens, you get a certain payout. So if you bet on whole cards, that's it. That's all you do. You say whole cards, and then you bet a preset amount. They have like three to five preset amounts. Seems to be based around like what the big blind is at your table. So if you're playing a 1 cent, 2 cent table, you'll get a 1 cent bet up to 10 cent bet or something like that. And you place that bet, and then when you get dealt whole cards at your next hand, most of the time you'll just lose that bet. But if you get dealt like a good hand, then you can get a payout. So like if you get a suited ace, you get paid out. I don't have the pay table in front of me, but let's say 3-1. If you get dealt pocket aces, you get paid out 25-1, something like that. And it's very simple. The flop cards is the same idea. So the next flop that comes, again, like if it's a paired board or a 3-suit, 3 straight board, you get paid so much. I know a straight flush board pays out like 35-1, something like that.
So it's really similar to a slot machine then. You put in a fixed amount and your payout is determined on the outcome.
Yeah, I suppose, that's probably the clearest outcome. Yeah, I mean, it's super simple, but because it had to be, because you operate it in a tiny panel built in to the poker client. It's next to kind of the chat box and your notes box. So they had to fit in all this functionality into it. So yeah, it's 2 bets. You set your amount. There's an auto bet feature as well. So you can be like, right, bet this for the next 10 hands, which you actually kind of need if you're into doing this, because if you do one hand, one bet, and you win it, you're not going to be able to bet on the next hand, because that hand's going to get dealt immediately, and you have to place a bet before any hand gets dealt, obviously, because it's based on your flop cards. So if you do it manually one at a time, and you want to do it every hand, you can't. So the only way to do it is using this auto bet feature. So you go like, I'm going to do a whole card bet and a flop bet for the next 10 hands for this amount, but stop if I win or lose X amount. And so they've got all this little functionality built in these little widgets. And yeah, that's it. I think as we spoke before, the house edge on this is 2.7%. Or the other way to look at it is the return to player is 100 minus that. What's that? 97.3. 97.3, which I presume is not a coincidence, is almost exactly what roulette is. Single zero roulette is. Someone corrected me on Twitter because I said last time it was exactly 2.7. It's not. It's 1/37 is the fraction, which is like 2.708 or something like that. But it's about as close.
Someone corrected you on that on Twitter.
They did, and I very much appreciate that.
Okay.
I mean, if you're thinking about they're setting these odds and they only want a pay table of 3 or 4 things and they want nice round numbers, I imagine they got as close to 2.7 as they could using this system. So yeah, there you have it.
And I would assume the payouts based on like hole cards are tied to the frequency, the actual percentage of time that you will get, let's say, a pocket pair dealt to you.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the only way that they could have worked out what the effective return to player is working out how often you're actually dealt those cards, how the frequency of them coming up, and then defining the pay table to that.
Would you win the same amount then for pocket deuces as you would pocket aces?
So, I mean, it just depends on like the literal pay table. And let's see if I've got it in the article.
Because statistically, they have the same probability.
Yeah, but the pay table is very simplified. So, like, I think it's every pocket pair is like, let's say like 5 to 1, 40, but pocket aces is like 25 to 1, and maybe so it's not. Yeah, so. Oh yeah, so I see your question now. Like, no, so it's not exactly set to like the probability of it happening minus 2.7%, because that'll be a really janky long pay table and probably not very exciting to play. So like they've created a pay table which is 40 to 1 if the flop is a straight flush. That's probably has no bearing on the reality of how much it happens, but obviously to work out your return to player, you work out exactly how frequently that's going to happen and do the maths,
So I think it's also important to note that the amount that you win or lose is not related to your stack at the table, correct?
Yeah, so when you place a bet and when you make money, that just connects directly with your Stars wallet. So you're not taking money off the table, you're not adding money to the table. And in fact, and maybe this is a missed opportunity, I was thinking about this. From everything that I could tell, other people don't see you placing side bets and see whether you won or not. So it's entirely private. Maybe that's just simpler to implement. Maybe that's like a regulatory thing. But I guess it seemed like a bit of a missed opportunity, just trying to think this through in the sense of, live multiplayer blackjack is a thing, right? Whether it's a live dealer casino or just 6 people sitting around a virtual table, you play with other people. And what you would get here is, let's say, I turn off my auto betting on the flop bet, but then I see someone else has made the flop bet and it did come down a straight flush and they win their 40 to 1. I'm going to be like, I missed out on my opportunity to make that bet, right? Yeah. So it actually seems like, and we would have talked about this before, casino games on the side of poker tables online is far from new. Everyone's got it. Very few exceptions. The difference here is that you're obviously betting on the poker table itself. So I suppose in a way it makes you more engaged in the poker action, but it's directly connected to your hole cards and the table. And being that it's a multiplayer experience already, it seemed like this could have also been a multiplayer experience. I guess I could be wrong. I mean, I watched some tables for art. I didn't see anyone else place a side bet. I did. I won a few. I didn't see anyone comment. So it just kind of gave me the impression that it was private. With that said, we should probably do those tests to make sure, hey, I've just talked for 2 minutes and make the assumption that it isn't. So we'll go with that. But so maybe that's something that they add. But yeah, side bet seems to be private. And as you say, yeah, money is just directly connected with your Stars wallet. Doesn't affect the cash at the table.
It seems like a lot of things that PokerStars does that are not directly poker related get a lot of pushback from the community. Do you have a sense, Nick, for how this is being received by the poker playing community? And is this something that's going to last?
So I think we probably talked about this recently when we talked about like the all-in sit goes, which came and disappeared. Like the only feedback they're going to get on it is negative. And it goes with that with any like it's going to be neutral to negative. Like if they launch a new slot, it's going to appeal from some people, I'm sure, but there's not going to be people on Twitter going, yes, finally, this slot has come out. And certainly, particularly being that we're in the poker community and people in the poker community follow us on Twitter and read our stuff, then people aren't going to go like, oh, finally I can place that bet. So I would say, I mean, it's fairly mostly shrug your shoulders, and any comment has been negative. So the one thing that I would say is that, as I say, like, you can already fire up a blackjack hand on 888. It really quite shocked me when I played some real money on that recently, that they have a mini blackjack fully embedded, like as a widget at the table off to the side. So this is no different from that. Other than it engages you a bit more in the actual poker action. And I would also say 2.7%, we kind of criticised, or I criticised, the all-in sit-and goes because their rate was like 5 to 10%, which just seemed incorrect, I guess, in the sense of out of whack of what any slot or video poker. This is right there. You know, these bets last a bit of time. You know, if you place that flop bet, you're kind of sweating to see whether there is a flop at all. And if there is, you know, I guess it's not just something that's 2 seconds, like maybe a slot spin. And yeah, so it's like, it seems like an acceptable kind of return to player that you get. Nicely implemented. If you're not interested in it, it's out of the way. You can turn it off in the settings. So, I mean, 100%, I would understand when people lament that any poker operator adds non-poker functionality. It is removing money from players' wallets, from poker players' wallets. And if you're a poker player, then you might see that as a negative and it takes money out of that ecosystem. Understood. But like, you know, that's just the reality of it that it is today. And this seems like a fairly innocuous, is that a word? Innocuous, you know, little feature that does not get in your way if you're not using it. And in fact, me going back on saying like, oh, this should be a public thing, that probably would get a lot more criticism if you're constantly playing and seeing people going, oh, this person just won this side bet, why don't you join in? That's probably a good reason why they shouldn't make it a public thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's okay. I don't look at this as a big money grab or anything. I think what it does is it provides an additional level of entertainment for players at the table. You know, players have famously for a long time placed side bets. I think we talked about this when we first learned that this feature was coming out, like high stakes poker. Everyone's got their prop bets. You know, that's in addition to poker. It's unrelated in most cases to their stack. And it just gives another thing to pay attention to engage the actual player. The thing that I wonder, though, is if that will reduce the amount of multi-tabling. You know, is that because of the cost, I guess? Does that mean that a player will be less likely to play multiple tables because now they have this other thing to pay attention to? Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
I mean, yes, possibly, but then you can just auto bet and just turn it on and ignore and see what the result is at the end. And now just thinking about it in terms of house age, I mean, 2.7% isn't 5%, but it could have also been like 0.5%, right? It could have been in line with blackjack or something. And again, like, I'm sure there's good reasons why they've set it at what roulette is and haven't set it at what blackjack is. But I don't know, when it's at 0.5%, if I could see myself, if I was playing a couple of tables, getting a bit bored and placing a bet that has a 99.6% return to player, probably wouldn't when there's, you know, a 97% return to player, but I guess I'm not the target market.
Well, I think a lot of the positive feedback that we would that will surround this particular feature is not going to be public. You know, really, it's going to depend on the internal data that PokerStars collects and how players are utilizing this function, how it's impacting the overall ecology. You know, are these players playing less games? Are they playing more games? Are they more engaged? Are they more likely to come back and play more frequently? That kind of information is really going to be the positive feedback, or potentially be the positive feedback that we unfortunately will probably not be privy to. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Poker Fuse podcast. As a reminder, please give us a like and a subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us and interact with us on Twitter. Nick is at PokerProJones. I'm at SpookyBugs. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.